Uh, Good evening, everyone. If I can have your attention. Uh, we're going to start in about a minute or so. I wanted to just sort of give you an introduction about what we are doing at InCITE and then hand you over to Caroline. First of all, Nitya and I would love to welcome you to the gallery. I think we started talking about InCITE about 3 years ago. The idea was to create a platform where architects could meet, have critical exchanges, have discussions, be able to also showcase what they're working on. And in some sense, I think we were inspired by Edgar's gallery for a long time. It kept the architectural discussions very alive, and for various reasons he had to sort of slow it down, and now it's become collab. We have been doing exhibitions and publications now for 3 years, and they've been very well received. We are networked with around 4,000 architects across the country, and all of them have been sort of very supportive and positive and encouraging of what we are doing. As a sort of next step in what we are doing, I think we wanted to find a physical space to anchor our activities, which would then give us this opportunity to have wonderful lectures like the one we are going to have today, and to be able to have exhibitions, lectures, to be able to do workshops here. So this is really a space that we are thinking of creating for the city and for the architects, so that we can have different ideas that can sort of be thrashed out on this forum. As the sort of first step today, we are sort of inaugurating the gallery today with Caroline's talk. So it's really exciting to be here about that. Coming up next, we are talking to the InCITE Gallery in Berlin. They are keen on bringing some of their exhibitions. That connection happened thanks to Naresh. And we have spoken to Terraform out of New York. We are doing an exhibition in the next 15 days on what's called the One Prize. That's a competition in New York using water as the 6th borough. As you know, NYC has 5 boroughs, and they floated a competition to use the water around Manhattan as a 6th borough, and we're going to have that exhibition next. We have a lot of interesting partnerships lined up nationally and internationally. There's a film series coming on the in partnership with the Dutch DFA. It's called Dutch Profiles, and that will start by the end of the month. And I want to thank all of you for being here, and at the same time, if you have connections, if you have things that you think you want to see happen in this gallery, it would be lovely if you could make those connections for us, and we'd be happy to follow up on that. So that's really what InCITE is about. It's about creating a space for architects that's exciting and that will foster more and more critical dialogue. As a first step on the today, what I would like to do is give you a very brief introduction on what we are doing this evening. UNStudio, of course, several of us have followed their works over the last 20 years very closely, and we are very excited to have Caroline here with us. Projects like Erasmus Bridge, Mobius House, and most recently the Mercedes-Benz Museum at Stuttgart. I think all of you recognize the images, and it's wonderful to see projects that deal with technology, with technique, with theory, with art, all combined and fused together, and projects at different scales. And Caroline will take you through the presentation today. We have sort of limited seats here, and we have 50 people upstairs watching the event on the closed circuit. So we are really sort of, we feel bad we couldn't accommodate them here, but these columns don't give you very good vision, but hopefully they'll be able to enjoy it. So hello to the guys up on the terrace as well. In terms of just basic things, this is the first time we are doing this here in this gallery, so if there is a sort of technical glitch, some sound issues, please bear with us. We'll try and figure that out as we go along. If you can you all hear me at the back? Is that okay? Sounds all right? Okay, so one glitch lesser. Cell phones, if they could go off, that would be a big help, because we are also recording the event, and we hope to be able to put it up for public viewing later on as well. So if cell phones are off or on silent, it would be a big help. I think the last thing that I want to say is that what we have been able to do, really, we've been able to do with the support of the architectural fraternity and people who come here, and it's fantastic that on a Monday evening we're able to get 250 people, 200 plus RSVPs. So I think we want to keep this going, so do spread the word, and it'd be wonderful to have you again and again, and more things happening at the gallery. Thank you for listening to me. I now introduce you to Caroline Boss, who will take you through the works of UNStudio and talk to you about her ideas. Caroline Boss.
Thank you, Kieran. Well, it's a great pleasure to be here, and thank you especially to Kiran and Nitya and for having me here. I'm really honored to be your first guest and UNStudio to be the first subject of your exhibitions, and I congratulate you on your achievements and having this gallery, your exciting platform. I think that's a wonderful way to bring architects together and support each other, especially when we have challenges. And UNStudio has really developed by always putting ourselves in the most challenging situations and always finding a lot of support in that and people who support us. So I think that we are very aware how important it is that we do these things if we want to bring our profession further. Now, the topic I'm going to bring in as a kind of a red thread to explain some of our projects is the relation between some urbanistic thinking and some architectural thinking as a kind of a theme throughout. When we started UNStudio, Ben van Berkel and I had already been in practice for about 10 years, but we had had certain experiences that led us to think that we should really rethink the profession of architecture. And we wrote then this book called Move, which was a manifesto on how we wanted to see the practice of architecture and also see the architectural project as a new and different thing. And one of the key things on that is this one page in that book. And it's about explaining how, what an inclusive architecture means and what is the basis of our work. And we have these we have an example of art next to an example from architecture. And what we are saying is that in the modernist period, we had the invention of the collage. And we had architects like Le Corbusier who also made their buildings as a collage with a system, with the different systems of architecture all on top of each other. The construction, the room space, and finally the way you move through the building. Then we go to the mid-20th century and we get Francis Bacon and we get the metabolists, and we see how there's some fusion, some morphing of the collage, and things are becoming a bit displaced and more played around with. But essentially, we can still recognize a lot of the fixed elements that we already know. But then now we come to our time, and there is a far more radical change. This computer image that we put on the front of the book is a seamless fusion of a face of an animal and a person, but in such a way that you can't really distinguish what comes from where. It's almost as if at a cellular level things have been morphed. And the same is happening in our cities. So we could ask the question, what is then the appropriate organization for architecture in these new conditions and with these new techniques that we have and this new way of living? And that question really is the basis of our work. Work which is very varied and has taken us through many scale levels, to many places, and to many different forms of organization, program, and so on. And this is where our work takes place. It's our studio in Amsterdam. So we still favor a very informal, atelier-like working space, even though we use all, of course, contemporary techniques. We also use model making and especially talking, I guess. That's always the basis of it. Well, this is the start, it was the start of our working life, because we were in a very funny position that doesn't happen often to architects, because we had been in practice for less than 2 years when we were commissioned with a very big project, a new city bridge in Rotterdam. And this was a fluke, something that you can't really plan that to happen. It wasn't even a competition. What happened was that Ben van Berkel had been teaching as a kind of assistant at the University of Delft, where he met a professor. This professor had been asked by the urban planner of Rotterdam, could you please invite some architects to give some advice, because the bridge that the architectural department of the city of Rotterdam was planning was not satisfactory to her, to this chief urban planner, because this bridge, the purpose of it was not only to establish a connection, but really to develop a new urban area. So she felt it had to be a special bridge, because it was more than purely infrastructural. It was also an urban intervention. And through this professor, Ben was invited to advise and make some sketches, and the sketches were brought to attention, and they were liked, and so through a complete accident, we were suddenly put in charge of this enormous project, which without practically any experience whatsoever. And from that we had to learn incredibly fast, because we were in an office with 5 architects amidst 200 engineers who were all attacking us, we felt, all the time. We didn't understand each other and so on. So we developed from that a very different perspective of the role of the architect. What it really is about is trying to connect all these different informations. And connectivity is also a design theme, which includes difference. This is a steel pylon, and the deck is all in concrete, and we designed every single column underneath the bridge to be different from the others, which of course, so everyone always sees only the pylon, but I think more work was probably put in what is happening underneath, which also has parking underneath.